Our final presentation is from John Smith at the University of New South Wales, and John Smith will talk about the acoustics of the didgeridoo.
That was the sound of the didgeridoo, an acoustic icon of Australia. The didgeridoo was developed by the indigenous peoples of the far north of Australia, who call it the Yadaki. Here we review research undertaken to understand the acoustics of this fascinating instrument. Didgeridoos are constructed from the branches of eucalypt trees where the interior has been hollowed out by hungry termites. The instrument usually plays a single low-pitched drone note that can be sustained continuously. This can happen for several minutes by using circular breathing. This involves the player inhaling through his nose while using air stored in his puffed cheeks to continue an uninterrupted sound. The consequent changes in vocal tract configuration compared to normal exhalation produce timbral changes that form part of the rhythmic pattern. We needed to develop a technique that could measure the acoustic properties of the player's vocal tract while playing. Basically, this involved injecting a broadband signal into the corner of the player's mouth and using a microphone to record the response. In this fashion, we were able to record the vocal tract impedance in different configurations of the mouth. We showed that strong resonances in the vocal tract can suppress bands of frequencies in the output sound. For example, if you look at the middle figure there, there's a strong peak in the vocal tract impedance and there's a dip in the output sound. The remaining strong bands of frequencies, called formants, are noticed by our hearing because they fall in the same ranges as the formants we use in speech. It's a bit like a sculptor removing marble, and we observe the bits that are left behind. Some of the striking variations in timbre come from vocalization. The player sings while playing, and this produces many new frequencies in the output sound. To analyze this process, we placed electrodes on either side of the throat and used a very small high-frequency electric current to measure their contact between the vocal folds. Another pair of electrodes above and below the lips allowed simultaneous measurement of the lip motion. Both of these vibrations modulate the flow of air, and this produces a range of new frequencies called heterodyne frequencies. Here's an example of a player imitating animal sounds. And here's another one where animal sounds are combined with complex rhythmic patterns. You can hear, in fact, that the player is playing on the second resonance for the final note. Finally, we sought to understand what makes a good instrument. Traditional didgeridoos result from the appetites of hungry termites, but they're just after a good feed. What are the features result in an instrument that appeals to human players? To investigate this, we made acoustic measurements on a set of 38 didgeridoos. The quality of each was assessed by 7 experts in 7 subjective categories. And here are impedance curves of those instruments. At first you might think that a player would prefer an instrument with nice strong resonances, but that's not the case. In fact, the ones with strong resonances were ranked the worst, and the one at the top there has almost no resonances in the region from 1 to 2 kilohertz. So players prefer an instrument with weak resonances, and this makes sense. This means that their own vocal tract resonance can dominate the timbre of the notes. So here are the 8 instruments we studied, and you can see you can't tell from looking outside. The complex internal structures produced by the termites, of course, aren't visible.
Carrie asks, if a didgeridoo cracks, how do the musicians fix it? Asking for a friend.
You could use modern day adhesives to do repairs like that, PVA glue or something. Traditionally, they would just go out and get a new one, unless it had particular religious or other significance. They can be easily replaced. So I'd try PVA glue.
All right, thank you. Our next question comes from Avery. Does the size of the didgeridoo player or their vocal tract have any bearing on how they rate the quality of a particular instrument?
It's a very good question and something we didn't try. They were all adult males who are usually the only ones who can play it. And I didn't have information on the size of their vocal tracts. Traditionally, players like ones in a certain length range that produces a nice low note. So people don't make soprano didgeridoos or contrabass didgeridoos. They all tend to be around that size you can see in the picture.
Thank you. Our next question comes from James. Was there a particular musical key of instrument preferred by the expert players?
We tried looking at whether the preference was a function of the pitch of the instrument, and we found no significant correlation there. So providing it's one they like, they don't mind. Remember, these are never played as part of a group or like in an orchestra where the pitch is important to match others.
Avery asks, does the nature of the resonance in the vocal tract affect the experience of playing the instrument?
I assume it's more satisfying if you feel in your vocal tract the vibrations in the instrument will also be felt strongly in the vocal tract. So I imagine it feels really nice when you get that really deep note vibrating in your tract. But we haven't done any study on it. It's a good point.
All right. Richard, you get your question in just in time. What is the practical use of this for players?
I'm not quite sure what this refers to, but
I'm guessing Richard is referring to your research.
Oh, I see, for players. Players could originally play the didgeridoo very well, and they certainly don't now with our help. We've really done it because it's a fascinating instrument. It's basically very simple. It's a wooden tube, and as you can see from the talk, it has amazing complex behavior. And when it's coupled to a human vocal tract, the didgeridoo is a bit unique in that other lip valve instruments like trombones and so on, there's a small mouthpiece between your vocal tract and the instrument. That doesn't happen in the didgeridoo. The size of a didgeridoo hole is very similar to your vocal tracts. You get very strong coupling.